Part of speech. In grammar, a part of speech or part of speech, abbreviated as POS or POS, also known as word. Class 1 or grammatical category 2-3 is a category of words or, more generally, of lexical items that have similar grammatical properties. Words that are assigned to the same part of speech generally display similar syntactic behavior. They play similar roles within the grammatical structure of sentences, sometimes similar morphological behavior in that they undergo inflection for similar properties and even similar semantic behavior. Commonly listed English parts of speech are noun, verb, adjective, adverb, pronoun, preposition, conjunction, interjection, numeral, article, and determiner. Other terms in part of speech, particularly in modern linguistic classifications, which often make more precise distinctions than the traditional scheme does, include word class, lexical class, and lexical category. Some authors restrict the term lexical category to refer only to a particular type of syntactic category. For them, the term excludes those parts of speech that are considered to be function words, such as pronouns. The term form class is also used, although this has various conflicting definitions. Word classes may be classified as open or closed. Open classes, typically including nouns, verbs and adjectives, acquire new members constantly, while closed classes such as pronouns and conjunctions acquire new members infrequently, if at all. Almost all languages have the word class as noun and verb, but beyond these two there are significant variations among different languages. 5 for example. Japanese has as many as 3 classes of adjectives, where English has 1. Chinese, Korean, Japanese and Vietnamese have a class of nominal classifiers. Many languages do not distinguish between adjectives and adverbs, or between adjectives and verbs, see stative verb. Because of such variation in the number of categories and their identifying properties, analysis of parts of speech must be done for each individual language. Nevertheless, the labels for each category are assigned on the basis of universal criteria. 5. History. The classification of words into lexical categories is found from the earliest moments in the history of linguistics. 6. India. In the Nirukta, written in the 6th or 5th century BCE, the Sanskrit grammarian Yaska defined 4 main categories of words. 7. Nama nama, noun, including adjective. Akyata akyata, verb. Upasarga upasarga, preverb or prefix. Naipada naipada, particle, invariant word, perhaps preposition. These 4 were grouped into 2 larger classes, inflectable nouns and verbs and uninflectable preverbs and particles. The ancient work on the grammar of the Tamil language, Tolkappiyam, argued to have been written around 2nd century CE. It classifies Tamil words as payar, noun, pinai, verb, adite, part of speech which modifies the relationships between verbs and nouns, and uri, word that further qualifies a noun or verb. 9. Western tradition. A century or 2 after the work of Yaska, the Greek scholar Plato wrote in his Cratylus dialogue, sentences are, I conceive, a combination of verbs rima and nouns onoma. 10. Aristotle added another class, conjunction, syndesmos, which included not only the words known today as conjunctions, but also other parts. The interpretations differ. In one interpretation it is pronouns, prepositions, and the article. 11. By the end of the 2nd century BCE, grammarians had expanded this classification scheme into 8 categories, seen in the Art of Grammar, attributed to Dionysius Prax. 12. Name, onoma, translated as noun, a part of speech inflected for case, signifying a concrete or abstract entity. It includes various species like nouns, adjectives, proper nouns, appellatives, collectives, ordinals, numerals and more. 13. Verb, rima, a part of speech without case inflection, but inflected for tense, person and number, signifying an activity or process performed or undergone. Participle, metok, a part of speech sharing features of the verb and the noun article arthron, a declinable part of speech, taken to include the definite article, but also the basic relative pronoun. Pronoun, antonymia, a part of speech substitutable for a noun and marked for a person. Preposition, prothesis, a part of speech placed before other words in composition and in syntax. Adverb, abrima, a part of speech without inflection, in modification of or in addition to a verb, adjective, clause, sentence, or other adverb. Conjunction, syndesmos, a part of speech binding together the discourse and filling gaps in its interpretation. It can be seen that these parts of speech are defined by morphological, syntactic and semantic criteria. The Latin grammarian Priscian Flat. 500 CE modified the above eightfold system, excluding article, since the Latin language, unlike Greek, does not have articles but adding interjection. 1415. The Latin names for the parts of speech, from which the corresponding modern English terms derive, were nomen, verbum, participium, pronomen, praepositio, adverbium, conjunctio and interjectio. The category nomen included substantives, nomen substantivum, corresponding to what are today called nouns in English, adjectives, nomen adjectivum, and numerals, nomen numeral. This is reflected in the older English terminology noun substantive, noun adjective and noun numeral. Later, 16, the adjective became a separate class, as often did the numerals, and the English word noun came to be applied to substantives only. Classification. Works of English grammar generally follow the pattern of the European tradition as described above, except that participles are now usually regarded as forms of verbs rather than as a separate part of speech, and numerals are often conflated with other parts of speech, nouns cardinal numerals, e.g., one, and collective numerals, e.g., dozen, adjectives ordinal numerals, e.g., first, and multiplier numerals, e.g., single, and adverbs multiplicative numerals, e.g., once, and distributive numerals, e.g., singly. 8 or 9 parts of speech are commonly listed, noun, verb, adjective, adverb, pronoun, preposition, conjunction, interjection, determiner. Some traditional classifications consider articles to be adjectives, yielding 8 parts of speech rather than 9. And some modern classifications define further classes in addition to these. For discussion, see the sections below. Additionally, there are other parts of speech including particles yes, no, and postpositions ago, notwithstanding, although many fewer words are in these categories. The classification below, or slight expansions of it, is still followed in most dictionaries. Noun, names. A word or lexical item denoting any abstract noun, e.g. home, or concrete entity concrete noun, e.g. house. A word or lexical item denoting any abstract noun, e.g. home or concrete entity concrete noun, e.g. house a person police officer, Michael place coastline, London think necktie, television idea happiness or quality bravery. Nouns can also be classified as count nouns or non-count nouns, some can belong to either category. The most common part of speech, they are called naming words. Pronoun replaces or places again. A substitute for a noun or noun phrase, them, he. Pronouns make sentences shorter and clearer since they replace nouns. Adjective describes, limits. A modifier of a noun or pronoun big, brave. Adjectives make the meaning of another word, noun, more precise. Verb states action or being. A word denoting an action, walk, occurrence, happen, or state of being be. Without a verb, a group of words cannot be a clause or sentence. Adverb describes, limits. A modifier of an adjective, verb, or another adverb, very, quite. Adverbs make language more precise. Preposition relates. A word that relates words to each other in a phrase or sentence and aids in syntactic context in, of. Prepositions show the relationship between a noun or a pronoun with another word in the sentence. Conjunction connects. A syntactic connector links words, phrases, or clauses and, but. Conjunctions connect words or group of words. Interjection expresses feelings and emotions. An emotional greeting or exclamation is a, alas. Interjections express strong feelings and emotions. Article describes, limits. A grammatical marker of definiteness, the or indefiniteness, a, n. The article is not always listed separately as its own part of speech. It is considered by some grammarians to be a type of adjective, 17, or sometimes the term determiner, a broader class, is used. English words are not generally marked as belonging to one part of speech or another. This contrasts with many other European languages, which use inflection more extensively, meaning that a given word form can often be identified as belonging to a particular part of speech and having certain additional grammatical properties. In English, most words are uninflected, while the inflected endings that exist are mostly ambiguous. Ed may mark a verbal past tense, a participle or a fully adjectival form. S may mark a plural noun, a possessive noun, or a present tense verb form. Ing may mark a participle, gerund, or pure adjective or noun. Although li is a frequent adverb marker, some adverbs e.g. tomorrow, fast, very, do not have that ending, while many adjectives do have it e.g. friendly, ugly, lovely, as do occasional words in other parts of speech e.g. jelly, fly, rely. Many English words can belong to more than one part of speech. Words like nay, break, outlaw, laser, microwave, and telephone might all be either verbs or nouns. In certain circumstances, even words with primarily grammatical functions can be used as verbs or nouns, as in, we must look to the house and not just the wise. The process whereby a word comes to be used as a different part of speech is called conversion or zero derivation. Functional classification. Linguists recognize that the above list of 8 or 9 word classes is drastically simplified. 18, for example, adverb, is to some extent a catch-all class that includes words with many different functions. Some have even argued that the most basic of category distinctions, that of nouns and verbs, is unfounded. 19, or not applicable to certain languages. 2021, modern linguists have proposed many different schemes whereby the words of English or other languages are placed into more specific categories and subcategories based on a more precise understanding of their grammatical functions. Common lexical categories set defined by function may include the following, not all of them will necessarily be applicable in a given language. Categories that will usually be open classes. Adjectives. Adverbs. Nouns. Verbs except auxiliary verbs. Interjections. Categories that will usually be closed classes. Auxiliary verbs. Cover BS. Conjunctions. Determiners, articles, quantifiers, demonstratives, and possessives measure words or classifiers. Adpositions, prepositions, postpositions, and circumpositions, preverbs. Pronouns. Cardinal numerals. Particles. Within a given category, subgroups of words may be identified based on more precise grammatical properties. For example, verbs may be specified according to the number and type of objects or other complements which they take. This is called subcategorization. Many modern descriptions of grammar include not only lexical categories or word classes, but also phrasal categories, used to classify phrases, in the sense of groups of words that form units having specific grammatical functions. Phrasal categories may include noun phrases, NP, verb phrases, VP, and so on. Lexical and phrasal categories together are called syntactic categories. A diagram showing some of the positive English syntactic categories. Open and closed classes. Word classes may be either open or closed. An open class is one that commonly accepts the addition of new words, while a closed class is one to which new items are very rarely added. Open classes normally contain large numbers of words, while closed classes are much smaller. Typical open classes found in English and many other languages are nouns, verbs excluding auxiliary verbs, if these are regarded as a separate class, adjectives, adverbs, and interjections. Ideophones are often an open class, though less familiar to English speakers, 22-23b, and are often open to nouns words. Typical closed classes are prepositions or postpositions, determiners, conjunctions, and pronouns. 25. The open-closed distinction is related to the distinction between lexical and functional categories, and to that between content words and function words, and some authors consider these identical, but the connection is not strict. Open classes are generally lexical categories in the stricter sense, containing words with greater semantic content. 26, while closed classes are normally functional categories, consisting of words that perform essentially grammatical functions. This is not universal. In many languages, verbs and adjectives 27, 28, 29 are closed classes, usually consisting of few members, and in Japanese the formation of new pronouns from existing nouns is relatively common, though to what extent these form a distinct word class is debated. Words are added to open classes through such processes as compounding, derivation, coining, and borrowing. When a new word is added through some such process, it can subsequently be used grammatically in sentences in the same ways as other words in its class. 30. A closed class may obtain new items through these same processes, but such changes are much rarer and take much more time. A closed class is normally seen as part of the core language and is not expected to change. In English, for example, new nouns, verbs, etc. are being added to the language constantly, including by the common process of verbing and other types of conversion, where an existing word comes to be used in a different part of speech. However, it is very unusual for a new pronoun, for example, to become accepted in the language, even in cases where there may be felt to be a need for one, as in the case of gender-neutral pronouns. The open or closed status of word classes varies between languages, even assuming that corresponding word classes exist. Most conspicuously, in many languages verbs and adjectives form closed classes of content words. An extreme example is found in Jingulu, which has only 3 verbs, while even the modern Indo-European Persian has no more than a few hundred simple verbs, a great deal of which are archaic. Some 20 Persian verbs are used as light verbs to form compounds. This lack of lexical verbs is shared with other Iranian languages. Japanese is similar, having few lexical verbs. 31 Basque verbs are also a closed class, with the vast majority of verbal senses instead expressed paraphrastically. In Japanese, verbs and adjectives are closed classes. 32 Though these are quite large, with about 700 adjectives. 33, 34, and verbs have opened slightly in recent years. Japanese adjectives are closely related to verbs. They can predicate a sentence, for instance. New verbal meanings are nearly always expressed paraphrastically by appending suru, to do to a noun, as in undo suru. Ru, to do exercise, and new adjectival meanings are nearly always expressed by adjectival nouns, using the suffix not when an adjectival noun modifies a noun phrase, as in hen na ojasan. Ojasan, strange man. The closeness of verbs has weakened in recent years, and in a few cases new verbs are created by appending ru to a noun or using it to replace the end of a word. This is mostly in casual speech for borrowed words, with the most well-established example being sabo-ru, cut class, play hooky from sabotaju, sabotaju, sabotage. 35 This recent innovation aside, the huge contribution of Sino-Japanese vocabulary was almost entirely borrowed as nouns, often verbal nouns or adjectival nouns. Other languages where adjectives are closed class include Swahili, 29 Pemba, and Luganda. By contrast, Japanese pronouns are an open class and nouns become used as pronouns with some frequency. A recent example is jibun, sifen, self now used by some as a first-person pronoun. The status of Japanese pronouns as a distinct class is disputed, however, with some considering it only a use of nouns, not a distinct class. The case is similar in languages of Southeast Asia, including Thai and Lao, in which, like Japanese, pronouns in terms of address vary significantly based on relative social standing and respect. 36. Some word classes are universally closed, however, including demonstratives and interrogative words. 36. Part of speech tagging. Sliding window-based part of speech tagging traditional grammar. A. Yes and no are sometimes classified as interjections. See also. Notes. Adverb. An adverb is a word or an expression that generally modifies a verb, an adjective, another adverb, a determiner, a clause, a preposition, or a sentence. Adverbs typically express manner, place, time, frequency, degree, or level of certainty by answering questions such as how, in what way, when, where, to what extent. This is called the adverbial function and may be performed by an individual adverb, by an adverbial phrase, or by an adverbial clause. Adverbs are traditionally regarded as one of the parts of speech. Modern linguists note that the term adverb has come to be used as a kind of catch-all category, used to classify words with various types of syntactic behavior, not necessarily having much in common except that they do not fit into any of the other available categories: noun, adjective, preposition, etc. 1. Functions. The English word adverb derives through French from Latin adverbium, from ad to, verbum, word, verb, and the nominal suffix ium. The term implies that the principal function of adverbs is to act as modifiers of verbs or verb phrases. 2. An adverb used in this way may provide information about the manner, place, time, frequency, certainty, or other circumstances of the activity denoted by the verb or verb phrase. Some examples. She sang loudly modifies the verb sang, indicating the manner of singing. We left it here modifies the verb phrase left it, indicating place. I worked yesterday modifies the verb worked, indicating time. You often make mistakes often modifies the verb phrase make mistakes, indicating frequency. He undoubtedly did it undoubtedly modifies the verb phrase did it, indicating certainty. Adverbs can also be used as modifiers of adjectives, and of other adverbs, often to indicate degree. Examples. You are quite right. The adverb quite modifies the adjective right. She sang very loudly. The adverb very modifies another adverb, loudly. They can also modify determiners, prepositional phrases, to or whole clauses or sentences, as in the following examples. At practically the only fruit practically modifies the determiner in the noun phrase, the only fruit, wherein only is an adjective. She drove us almost to the station almost modifies the prepositional phrase to the station. Certainly we need to act certainly modifies the sentence as a whole. Adverbs thus perform a wide range of modifying functions. The major exception is the function of modifier of nouns, which is performed instead by adjectives. Compare she sang loudly with her loud singing disturbed me. Here the verb sing is modified by the adverb loudly, whereas the noun singing is modified by the adjective loud. However, because some adverbs and adjectives are homonyms, their respective functions are sometimes conflated. Even numbers are divisible by 2. The camel even drank. The word even in the first sentence is an adjective, since it is a prepositive modifier that modifies the noun numbers. The word even in the second sentence is a prepositive adverb that modifies the verb drank. Although it is possible for an adverb to precede or to follow a noun or a noun phrase, the adverb nonetheless does not modify either in such cases, as in. Internationally there is a shortage of protein for animal feeds. There is a shortage internationally of protein for animal feeds. There is an international shortage of protein for animal feeds. In the first sentence, internationally is a prepositive adverb that modifies the clause, there is. In the second sentence, internationally is a postpositive adverb that modifies the clause, there is. By contrast, the third sentence contains, international is a prepositive adjective that modifies the noun, shortage. Adverbs can sometimes be used as predicative expressions. In English, this applies especially to adverbs of location. Your seat is there. Here's my boarding pass. Wherein, boarding pass is the subject and here is the predicate in a syntax that entails a subject-verb inversion. When the function of an adverb is performed by an expression consisting of more than one word, it is called an adverbial phrase or adverbial clause, or simply an adverbial. Formation and comparison. In English, adverbs of manner, answering the question how, are often formed by adding ly to adjectives, but flat adverbs such as in drive fast, drive slow, and drive friendly have the same form as the corresponding adjective. Other languages often have similar methods for deriving adverbs from adjectives. French, for example, uses the suffix ment or else use the same form for both adjectives and adverbs, as in German and Dutch, where for example schnell or snell, respectively, mean either quick or quickly, depending on the context. Many other adverbs, however, are not related to adjectives in this way. They may be derived from other words or phrases, or may be single morphemes. Examples of such adverbs in English include here, there, together, yesterday, aboard, very, almost, etc. When meaning permits, adverbs may undergo comparison, taking comparative and superlative forms. In English this is usually done by adding more and most before the adverb, more slowly, most slowly, although there are a few adverbs that take inflected forms, such as well, for which better and best are used. For more information about the formation and use of adverbs in English, see English adverbs. For other languages, see section in specific languages below, and the articles on individual languages and their grammars. As a catch-all category, adverbs are considered a part of speech in traditional English grammar, and are still included as a part of speech in grammar taught in schools and used in dictionaries. However, modern grammarians recognize that words traditionally grouped together as adverbs serve a number of different functions. Some describe adverbs as a catch-all category that includes all words that do not belong to one of the other parts of speech. 3. A logical approach to dividing words into classes relies on recognizing which words can be used in a certain context. For example, the only type of word that can be inserted in the following template to form a grammatical sentence is a noun. The blank is red. For example, the hat is red. When this approach is taken, it is seen that adverbs fall into a number of different categories. For example, some adverbs can be used to modify an entire sentence, whereas others cannot. Even when a sentential adverb has other functions, the meaning is often not the same. For example, in the sentences she gave birth naturally and naturally, she gave birth, the word naturally has different meanings. In the first sentence, as a verb modifying adverb, it means, in a natural manner, while in the second sentence, as a sentential adverb, it means something like, of course. Words like very afford another example. We can say Perry is very fast, but not Perry very won the race. These words can modify adjectives but not verbs. On the other hand, there are words like here and there that cannot modify adjectives. We can say the sock looks good there but not it is a their beautiful sock. The fact that many adverbs can be used in more than one of these functions can confuse the issue, and it may seem like splitting hairs to say that a single adverb is really two or more words that serve different functions. However, this distinction can be useful, especially when considering adverbs like naturally that have different meanings in their different functions. Rodney Huddleston distinguishes between a word and a lexicogrammatical word. 4. Grammarians find difficulty categorizing negating words, such as the English not. Although traditionally listed as an adverb, this word does not behave grammatically like any other, and it probably should be placed in a class of its own. 5. 6. In other languages. In Dutch, adverbs have a basic form of their corresponding adjectives and are not inflected, though they sometimes can be compared. In German, the term adverb is defined differently from its use in the English language. German adverbs form a group of uninflectable words, though a few can be compared. An English adverb which is derived from an adjective is arranged in German under the adjectives with adverbial use in a sentence. The others are also called adverbs in the German language. In Scandinavian languages, adverbs are typically derived from adjectives by adding the suffix t, which makes it identical to the adjective's neuter form. Scandinavian adjectives, like English ones, are inflected in terms of comparison by adding are, comparative or est, superlative. In inflected forms of adjectives, the t is absent. Periphrastic comparison is also possible. In most Romance languages, many adverbs are formed from adjectives, often the feminine form, by adding mente, Portuguese, Spanish, Galician, Italian, or ment, French, Catalan from Latin mens, mentis, mind, intelligence, or suffix mentum, result or way of action, while other adverbs are single forms which are invariable. In Romanian, almost all adverbs are simply the masculine singular form of the corresponding adjective, one notable exception being bind, well, bunt, good. However, there are some Romanian adverbs built from certain masculine singular nouns using the suffix estate, such as the following ones: băiat estate boievely, tiner estate youthfully, bărbat estate manly, frat estate brotherly, etc. Interlingua also forms adverbs by adding mente to the adjective. If an adjective ends in c, the adverbial ending is a ment. A few short, invariable adverbs, such as bent well and mal badly, are available and widely used. In Esperanto, adverbs are not formed from adjectives but are made by adding e directly to the word root. Thus, from bon are derived bone, well, and bona, good. See also, special Esperanto adverbs. In Hungarian, adverbs are formed from adjectives of any degree through the suffixes ul, ulen, and depending on the adjective, see beautiful right pointing arrow siebent beautifully, or the comparative sheb more beautiful right pointing arrow shebent more beautifully. Modern Standard Arabic forms adverbs by adding the indefinite accusative ending in to the root. Kathir, many, becomes kathiran, much. However, adposition. Adpositions are a class of words used to express spatial or temporal relations in, under, towards, behind, ago, etc. or mark various semantic roles of, for. 1. The most common adpositions are prepositions which precede their complement and postpositions which follow their complement. An adposition typically combines with a noun phrase, this being called its complement, or sometimes object. English generally has prepositions rather than postpositions. Words such as in, under and of precede their objects, such as in England, under the table, of Jane, although there are a few exceptions including ago and notwithstanding, as in, 3 days ago, and financial limitations notwithstanding. Some languages that use a different word order have postpositions instead, like Turkic languages, or have both types like Finnish. The phrase formed by an adposition together with its complement is called an adpositional phrase, or prepositional phrase, postpositional phrase, etc. Such a phrase can function as an adjective or as an adverb. A common type of adposition is the circumposition, which consists of two parts that appear on each side of the complement. Other terms sometimes used for particular types of adposition include ambiposition, imposition and interposition. Some linguists use the word preposition in place of adposition regardless of the applicable word order. 2. Terminology. The word preposition comes from Latin, preprefix before, and Latin, poner to put. This refers to the situation in Latin and Greek and in English where such words are placed before their complement, except sometimes in ancient Greek, and are hence prepositioned. In some languages, including Sindhi, Hindustani, Turkish, Hungarian, Korean, and Japanese, the same kinds of words typically come after their complement. To indicate this, they are called postpositions using the prefix post, from Latin post meaning behind, after. There are also some cases where the function is performed by two parts coming before and after the complement. This is called a circumposition from Latin circumprefix, around. In some languages, for example Finnish, some adpositions can be used as both prepositions and postpositions. Prepositions, postpositions and circumpositions are collectively known as adpositions, using the Latin prefix ad, meaning to. However, some linguists prefer to use the well-known and longer established term preposition in place of adposition, irrespective of position relative to the complement. 2. Grammatical properties. An adposition typically combines with exactly one complement, most often a noun phrase or, in a different analysis, a determiner phrase. In English, this is generally a noun or something functioning as a noun, e.g., a gerund together with its specifier and modifiers such as articles, adjectives, etc. The complement is sometimes called the object of the adposition. The resulting phrase, formed by the adposition together with its complement, is called an adpositional phrase or prepositional phrase (PP), or for specificity, a postpositional or circumpositional phrase. An adposition establishes a grammatical relationship that links its complement to another word or phrase in the context. It also generally establishes a semantic relationship, which may be spatial in, on, under, temporal after, during, or of some other type of, for, via. The World Atlas of Language Structures treats a word as an adposition if it takes a noun phrase as a complement and indicates the grammatical or semantic relationship of that phrase to the verb in the containing clause. 3. Some examples of the use of English prepositions are given below. In each case, the prepositional phrase appears in italics, the preposition within it appears in bold, and the preposition's complement is underlined. As demonstrated in some of the examples, more than one prepositional phrase may act as an adjunct to the same word. As an adjunct to a noun. The weather in March. Cheese from France with live bacteria. As a predicative expression, complement of a copula. The key is under the stone. As an adjunct to a verb. Sleep throughout the winter. Danced atop the tables for hours. Dispense with the formalities, see semantic functions, above as an adjunct to an adjective. Happy for them. Sick until recently. In the last of these examples, the complement has the form of an adverb, which has been nominalized to serve as a noun phrase. See different forms of complement below. Prepositional phrases themselves are sometimes nominalized. In the cellar was chosen as the best place to store the wine. An adposition may determine the grammatical case of its complement. In English, the complements of prepositions take the objective case where available, from him, not from he. In Koine Greek, for example, certain prepositions always take their objects in a certain case, e.g., and always takes its object in the dative, while other prepositions may take their object in one of two or more cases, depending on the meaning of the preposition, e.g., dia takes its object in the genitive or the accusative, depending on the meaning. Some languages have cases that are used exclusively after prepositions, prepositional case, or special forms of pronouns for use after prepositions, prepositional pronoun. The functions of adpositions overlap with those of case markings. For example, the meaning of the English preposition of is expressed in many languages by a genitive case ending, but adpositions are classed as syntactic elements, while case markings are morphological. Adpositions themselves are usually non-inflecting, invariant. They do not have paradigms of the form, such as tense, case, gender, etc. The same way that verbs, adjectives, and nouns can. There are exceptions, though, such as prepositions that have fused with a pronominal object to form inflected prepositions. The following properties are characteristic of most adpositional systems. Adpositions are among the most frequently occurring words in languages that have them. For example, one frequency ranking for English word forms for begins as follows: prepositions in bold. The, of, and, to, a, in, that, it, is, was, I, for, on, you. The most common adpositions are single, monomorphemic words. According to the ranking cited above, for example, the most common English prepositions are on, in, to, by, for, with, at, of, from, as, all of which are single-syllable words and cannot be broken down into smaller units of meaning. Adpositions form a closed class of lexical items and cannot be productively derived from words of other categories. Classification of adpositions. As noted above, adpositions are referred to by various terms, depending on their position relative to the complement. While the term preposition sometimes denotes any adposition, its stricter meaning refers only to one that precedes its complement. Examples of this, from English, have been given above. Similar examples can be found in many European and other languages. For example, German, mit eine Frau with a woman. French, sur la table, on the table. Welsh, arbwrdd, on the table. Polish, na stol, on the table. Russian, you mina, in the possession of me, I have. Khmer, el kadakan, on the blackboard. Tigrinya, ablitala, on top table, avditala, on. Under table. In certain grammatical constructions, the complement of a preposition may be absent or may be moved from its position directly following the preposition. This may be referred to as preposition stranding, see also below, as in, whom did you go with? And, there's only one thing worse than being talked about. There are also some, mainly colloquial, expressions in which a preposition's complement may be omitted, such as, I'm going to the park. Do you want to come with me? And the French il fait trop froid, je ne suis pas habillé pour, it's too cold, I'm not dressed for the situation. The bolded words in these examples are generally still considered prepositions because when they form a phrase with a complement, in more ordinary constructions they must appear first. A postposition follows its complement to form a postpositional phrase. Examples include, Latin, mecum, with me, literally, me with. Turkish, benemel or benemil, with me, literally, my with. Hungarian, falf, under the tree, literally, tree under. Chinese, jozi shang lit. Table on, this is a nominal form, which usually requires an additional preposition to form an adverbial phrase. See Chinese locative phrases. English, 10 kilometers away, 10 months ago. Both could be considered adverbs. Some adpositions can appear either before or after their complement. English, the evidence notwithstanding or notwithstanding the evidence. German, minor Meinung nach or nach minor Meinung, in my opinion. German, die Straße entlang or entlang der Straße, along the road. Here are different cases used when entlang precedes the noun. An adposition like the above, which can be either a preposition or a postposition, can be called an ambiposition. 5. However, ambiposition may also be used to refer to a circumposition, see below. 6. Or to a word that appears to function as a preposition and postposition simultaneously, as in the Vedic Sanskrit construction noun1, noun2, meaning, from noun1 to noun 2. 7. Whether a language has primarily prepositions or postpositions is seen as an aspect of its typological classification, and tends to correlate with other properties related to head directionality. Since an adposition is regarded as the head of its phrase, prepositional phrases are head initial, or right branching, while postpositional phrases are head final, or left branching. There is a tendency for languages that feature postpositions also to have other head final features, such as verbs that follow their objects, and for languages that feature prepositions to have other head initial features, such as verbs that precede their objects. This is only a tendency. However, an example of a language that behaves differently is Latin, which employs mostly prepositions, even though it typically places verbs after their objects. A circumposition consists of two or more parts, positioned on both sides of the complement. Circumpositions are very common in Pashto and Kurdish. The following are examples from Northern Kurdish Kurmanji. By, read with. D, in, for things, not places. D, read via, through. G, read for. D, fade since. Various constructions in other languages might also be analyzed as circumpositional, for example, English, from now on. Dutch, narhadinto, towards the end, lit. To the end, Chinese, Kongbingxiangli, from the inside of the refrigerator, lit. From refrigerator inside. French, en detail press except for one detail, lit. At one detail near. Swedish, for trade to Marsedan, 3 hours ago, lit. For 3 hours since. German, aus dem Zimmer heraus, out from the room, lit. From the room out. Tigrinya, Kavichi Indahar, from now on, lit. From now to later. Most such phrases, however, can be analyzed as having a different hierarchical structure, such as a prepositional phrase modifying a following adverb. The Chinese example could be analyzed as a prepositional phrase headed by Kong, from, taking the locative noun phrase Bingxiangli, refrigerator inside, as its complement. An imposition is a rare type of adposition that appears between parts of a complex complement. For example, in the native Californian Timbisha language, the phrase, from a mean cold, can be translated using the word order, cold from mean. The imposition follows the noun but precedes any following modifiers that form part of the same noun phrase. 8. The Latin word cum is also commonly used as an imposition, as in the phrase summa cum laude, meaning, with highest praise, lit. Highest with praise. The term interposition has been used 9 for adpositions in structures such as word for word, French coup sur coup, one after another, repeatedly, and Russian drug estrugum, one with the other. This is not a case of an adposition appearing inside its complement, as the two nouns do not form a single phrase, there is no phrase word. For example, such uses have more of a coordinating character. Stranding. Preposition stranding is a syntactic construct in which a preposition occurs somewhere other than immediately before its complement. For example, in the English sentence, what did you sit on? The preposition on has what is its complement, but what is moved to the start of the sentence, because it is an interrogative word. This sentence is much more common and natural than the equivalent sentence without stranding. On what did you sit? Preposition stranding is commonly found in English, as well as North Germanic languages such as Swedish. Its existence in German is debated. Preposition stranding is also found in some Niger-Congo languages such as Vada and Djibati, and in some North American varieties of French. Some prescriptive English grammars teach that prepositions cannot end a sentence, although there is no rule prohibiting that use. 11. 12. Similar rules arose during the rise of classicism, when they were applied to English in imitation of classical languages such as Latin. Otto Jespersen, in his Essentials of English Grammar, first published 1933, commented on this definition-derived rule. Nor need a preposition Latin. Prepositio, stand before the word it governs. Go the fools among Shakespeare, what are you laughing at? You might just as well believe that all blackguards are black or that turkeys come from Turkey. Many names have either been chosen unfortunately at first or have changed their meanings in the course of time. 13. Simple versus complex. Simple adpositions consist of a single word on, in, for, towards, etc. Complex adpositions consist of a group of words that act as one unit. Examples of complex prepositions in English include in spite of, with respect to, except for, by dint of, and next to. The distinction between simple and complex adpositions is not clear-cut. Many complex adpositions are derived from simple forms, e.g., with plus in right pointing arrow within, by plus side right pointing arrow beside through grammaticalization. This change takes time, and during the transitional stages, the adposition acts in some ways like a single word, and in other ways like a multi-word unit. For example, current German orthographic conventions recognize the indeterminate status of certain prepositions, allowing two spellings, anstelle and stell instead of aufgrund because of mithof mit hilf by means of zugunsten in favor of zugunsten to the disadvantage of zulasten at the expense of. 14. The distinction between complex adpositions and free combinations of words is not a black and white issue. Complex adpositions in English, prepositional idioms, can be more fossilized or less fossilized. In English, this applies to a number of structures of the form, preposition plus article plus noun plus preposition, such as in front of, for the sake of. 15. The following characteristics are good indications that a given combination is frozen enough to be considered a complex preposition in English. 16. It contains a word that cannot be used in any other context, by dint of, in lieu of. The first preposition cannot be replaced, with a view to but not for, without a view to. It is impossible to insert an article, or to use a different article, on account of but not on the account of, for the sake of but not for sake of. The range of possible adjectives is very limited, in great favor of, but not in helpful favor of. The grammatical number of the noun cannot be changed, by virtue of but not by virtues of. It is impossible to use a possessive determiner, in spite of him, not in his spite. Marginal prepositions. Marginal prepositions are prepositions that have affinities with other word classes, most notably participles. 17. Marginal prepositions behave like prepositions but derive from other parts of speech. Some marginal prepositions in English include barring, concerning, considering, excluding, failing, following, including, notwithstanding, regarding, and respecting. Proper versus improper. In descriptions of some languages, prepositions are divided into proper, or essential, and improper, or accidental. A preposition is called improper if it is some other part of speech being used in the same way as a preposition. Examples of simple and complex prepositions that have been so classified include prima di, before, and davanti, in front of, in Italian, 18, and ergo, on account of, and causa, for the sake of, in Latin. 19. In reference to ancient Greek, however, an improper preposition is one that cannot also serve as a prefix to a verb. 20. Different forms of complement. As noted above, adpositions typically have noun phrases as complements. This can include nominal clauses and certain types of non-finite verb phrase. We can't agree on whether to have children or not. Complement is a nominal clause. Let's think about solving this problem. Complement is a gerund phrase. Pour encourager les autres French, to encourage the others. Complement is an infinitive phrase. The word to when it precedes the infinitive in English is not a preposition, but rather is a grammatical particle outside of any main word class. In other cases, the complement may have the form of an adjective or adjective phrase, or an adverbial. This may be regarded as a complement representing a different syntactic category, or simply as an atypical form of noun phrase. See nominalization. The scene went from blindingly bright to pitch black. Complements are adjective phrases. I worked there until recently. Complement is an adverb. Come out from under the bed. Complement is an adverbial. In the last example, the complement of the preposition from is in fact another prepositional phrase. The resulting sequence of two prepositions from under may be regarded as a complex preposition. In some languages, such a sequence may be represented by a single word, as Russian is from under. Some adpositions appear to combine with two complements. With Sammy president, we can all come out of hiding again. For Sammy to become president, they'd have to seriously modify the Constitution. It is more commonly assumed, however, that Sammy in the following predicate forms a small clause, which then becomes a single complement of the preposition. In the first example, a word such as this may be considered to have been elided, which, if present, would clarify the grammatical relationship. Semantic functions. Adpositions can be used to express a wide range of semantic relations between their complement and the rest of the context. The relations expressed may be spatial, denoting location or direction, temporal, denoting position and time, or relations expressing comparison, content, agent, instrument, means, manner, cause, purpose, reference, etc. Most common adpositions are highly polysemous, they have various different meanings. In many cases, a primary, spatial meaning becomes extended to non-spatial uses by metaphorical or other processes. Because of the variety of meanings, a single adposition often has many possible equivalents in another language, depending on the exact context. This can cause difficulties in foreign language learning. Usage can also vary between dialects of the same language. For example, American English has on the weekend, whereas British English uses at the weekend. In some contexts, as in the case of some phrasal verbs, the choice of adposition may be determined by another element in the construction or be fixed by the construction as a whole. Here the adposition may have little independent semantic content of its own, and there may be no clear reason why the particular adposition is used rather than another. Examples of such expressions are English, dispense with, listen to, insist on, proud of, good at. Russian, отвечать на вопрос, answer the question, literally, answer on the question, obvinение versus obmain, accusation of literally, in fraud. Spanish, soñar con ganar el título, dream about lit. In English and many other languages, prepositional phrases with static meaning are commonly used as predicative expressions after a copula. Bob is at the store. This may happen with some directional prepositions as well. Bob is from Australia, but this is less common. Directional prepositional phrases combine mostly with verbs that indicate movement. Directional prepositional phrases combine mostly with verbs that indicate movement. Jay is going into her bedroom, but not asterisk. Jay is lying down into her bedroom. Directional meanings can be further divided into telic and atelic. Telic prepositional phrases imply movement all the way to the endpoint. She ran to the fence, while atelic ones do not. She ran towards the fence. 21. Static meanings can be divided into projective and non-projective, where projective meanings are those whose understanding requires knowledge of the perspective or point of view. For example, the meaning of behind the rock is likely to depend on the position of the speaker. Projective, whereas the meaning of on the desk is not non-projective. Sometimes the interpretation is ambiguous, as in behind the house, which may mean either at the natural back of the house or on the opposite side of the house from the speaker. 22. Inflected adpositions. Some languages feature inflected adpositions, usually prepositions marked for grammatical person and or grammatical number to give meanings such as on me, from you, etc. In the Indo-European languages this phenomenon is mostly confined to the Celtic languages like Welsh and Irish. Polish also allows some degree of combining prepositions with pronouns in the third person. 23. Celtic. The majority of Welsh prepositions can be inflected. This is achieved by having a preposition such as o, a from, plus a linking element. In the case of o this is hun plus the assimilated pronoun element, resulting in o hen being the preposition's stem form. It is common in speech for the pronoun to be present after the preposition, but it can be omitted. Unless used with a pronoun the form is always o and not the stem, e.g. dwi and o jimru. I come from Wales's, gourmand ogwrw, too much of beer. The following table gives the inflected forms of the preposition o, of from. The optional pronouns that follow the inflected forms are given in parentheses. Singular plural. First person o hen of I, o ho no I, of from me, o han. In linguistics and grammar, a pronoun plus pro is a word or a group of words that one may substitute for a noun or noun phrase. Pronouns have traditionally been regarded as one of the parts of speech, but some modern theorists would not consider them to form a single class, in view of the variety of functions they perform cross-linguistically. An example of a pronoun is you, which can be either singular or plural. Subtypes include personal and possessive pronouns, reflexive and reciprocal pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, relative and interrogative pronouns, and indefinite pronouns. 1-34. 2. The use of pronouns often involves anaphora, where the meaning of the pronoun is dependent on an antecedent. For example, in the sentence that poor man looks as if he needs a new coat, the meaning of the pronoun he is dependent on its antecedent, that poor man. The adjective form of the word pronoun is pronominal. A pronominal is also a word or phrase that acts as a pronoun. For example, in that's not the one I wanted, the phrase the one containing the prop word one is a pronominal. 3. Theory. Pronoun versus proform. Pronoun is a category of words. A proform is a type of function word or expression that stands in for, expresses the same content as another word, phrase, clause or sentence where the meaning is recoverable from the context. For, in English, pronouns mostly function as proforms, but there are pronouns that are not proforms and proforms that are not pronouns. 5p. 239. Pronouns versus proforms. Example pronoun proform. 1. It is a good idea. 2. I know the people who work there. 3. Who works there. 4. It is raining. 5. I asked her to help, and she did so right away. 6. JJ and Petra helped, but the others didn't. Examples 1 and 2 are pronouns and proforms. In 1, the pronoun it stands in for whatever was mentioned and is a good idea. In 2, the relative pronoun who stands in for the people. Examples 3 and 4 are pronouns but not proforms. In 3, the interrogative pronoun who does not stand in for anything. Similarly, in 4, it is a dummy pronoun, one that does not stand in for anything. No other word can function there with the same meaning. We do not say, the sky is raining, or, the weather is raining. A prop word is a word with little or no semantic content used where grammar dictates a certain sentence member, e.g., to provide a support on which to hang a modifier. The word most commonly considered as a prop word in English is one with the plural form ones. The prop word one takes the place of a countable noun in a noun phrase or determiner phrase normally in a context where it is clear which noun it is replacing. For example, in a context in which hats are being talked about, the red one means the red hat, and the ones we bought means the hats we bought. The prop word thus functions somewhat similarly to a pronoun, except that a pronoun usually takes the place of a whole noun determiner phrase. For example, the red hat may be replaced by the pronoun it. Finally, in 5 and 6 there are proforms that are not pronouns. In 5 did so is a verb phrase that stands in for, helped, inflected from to help stated earlier in the sentence. Similarly, in 6 others is a common noun, not a pronoun, but the others probably stands in for the names of other people involved, e.g., show, Alana, and Ali, all proper nouns. Grammar. Pronouns antonymia are listed as one of 8 parts of speech in the art of grammar, a treatise on Greek grammar attributed to Dionysius Thraxan dating from the 2nd century BC. The pronoun is described there as a part of speech substitutable for a noun and marked for a person. Pronouns continue to be regarded as a part of speech in Latin grammar, the Latin term being pronomen, from which the English name, through Middle French, ultimately derives and thus in the European tradition generally. Because of the many different syntactic roles that they play, pronouns are less likely to be a single word class in more modern approaches to grammar. 6. Pronoun determiner. Possessive ours, our freedom. Demonstrative this gentleman. Indefinite some frogs. Negative none no information. Interrogative which option. Linguistics. Examples of are is a determiner or a noun. Linguists in particular have trouble classifying pronouns in a single category, and some do not agree that pronouns substitute nouns are noun categories. Once certain types of pronouns are often identical or similar in form to determiners with related meaning, some English examples are given in the table. Observation has led some linguists, such as Paul Postal, to regard pronouns as determiners that have had their following noun or noun phrase deleted. Since such patterning can even be claimed for certain personal pronouns, for example, we and you might be analyzed as determiners in phrases like we Brits and you tennis players. Other linguists have taken a similar view, uniting pronouns and determiners into a single class. Sometimes called determiner pronoun, or regarding determiners as a subclass of pronouns or vice versa. The distinction considered to be one of subcategorization or valency, rather like the distinction between transitive and intransitive verbs. Determiners take a noun phrase complement like transitive verbs do, while pronouns do not. It is consistent with the determiner phrase viewpoint, whereby a determiner, rather than the noun that follows it, is taken to be the head of the phrase. Cross-linguistically, it seems as though pronouns share 3 distinct categories: point of view, person, and number. The breadth of each subcategory, however, tends to differ among languages. 9. Binding theory and antecedents. The use of pronouns often involves anaphora, where the meaning of the pronoun is dependent on another referential element. The referent of the pronoun is often the same as that of a preceding, or sometimes following, noun phrase, called the antecedent of the pronoun. The grammatical behavior of certain types of pronouns, and in particular their possible relationship with their antecedents, has been the focus of studies in binding, notably in the Chomskyan government and binding theory. In this binding context, reflexive and reciprocal pronouns in English such as himself and each other are referred to as anaphors in a specialized restricted sense rather than as pronominal elements. Under binding theory, specific principles apply to different sets of pronouns. Example: reflexive structure. Since, himself, is. Immediately. Dominated by, John, principle A is. Satisfied. English, reflexive and reciprocal pronouns must adhere to principle A. An anaphor, reflexive or reciprocal, such as, each other, must be bound in its governing category, roughly, the clause. Therefore, in syntactic structure it must be lower in structure, it must have an antecedent and have a direct relationship with its referent. This is called a C-command relationship. For instance, we see that John cut himself is grammatical, but himself cut John is not, despite having identical arguments, since himself, the reflexive, must be lower in structure to John, its referent. Additionally, we see examples like John said that Mary cut himself are not grammatical because there is an intermediary noun, Mary, that disallows the two referents from having a direct relationship. Example: pronoun structure. Since, him, is immediately. Dominated by, John, principle B is. Violated. On the other hand, personal pronouns such as him or them must adhere to principle B. A pronoun must be free, i.e., not bound within its governing category, roughly, the clause. This means that although the pronouns can have a referent, they cannot have a direct relationship with the referent where the referent selects the pronoun. For instance, John said Mary cut him is grammatical because the two co-referents, John and him, are separated structurally by Mary. This is why a sentence like John cut him where him refers to John is ungrammatical. Binding cross-linguistically. The type of binding that applies to subsets of pronouns varies cross-linguistically. For instance, in German linguistics, pronouns can be split into 2 distinct categories, personal pronouns and D-pronouns. Although personal pronouns act identically to English personal pronouns, i.e. follow principle B, D-pronouns follow yet another principle, principle C, and function similarly to nouns in that they cannot have a direct relationship to an antecedent. 9. Antecedents. The following sentences give examples of particular types of pronouns used with antecedents, third-person personal pronouns. That poor man looks as if he needs a new coat. The noun phrase that poor man is the antecedent of he. Julia arrived yesterday. I met her at the station. Julia is the antecedent of her. When they saw us, the lions began roaring. The lions is the antecedent of they. As it comes after the pronoun, it may be called a postcedent. Other personal pronouns in some circumstances. Terry and I were hoping no one would find us. Terry and I is the antecedent of us. You and Alice can come if you like. You and Alice is the antecedent of the second, plural, you. Reflexive and reciprocal pronouns. Jack hurt himself. Jack is the antecedent of himself. We were teasing each other. We is the antecedent of each other. Relative pronouns. The woman who looked at you is my sister. The woman is the antecedent of who. Some other types, such as indefinite pronouns, are usually used without antecedents. Relative pronouns are used without antecedents in free relative clauses. Even third-person personal pronouns are sometimes used without antecedents, unprecursed. This applies to special uses such as demi-pronouns and generic they, as well as cases where the referent is implied by the context. English pronouns have often traditionally been classified as different from nouns, but at least one modern grammar defines them as a subclass of nouns. 1033-42. English personal pronouns have a number of different syntactic contexts: subject, object, possessive, reflexive, and many features. Person first, second, third. Number, singular, plural. Gender, masculine, feminine, neuter or inanimate, epicene. Personal pronouns in standard modern English. Person, number, and gender, subject, object. Dependent, possessive, determiner, independent. Possessive, reflexive. First. Singular, I mean, my, mine, myself. Plural, we, us, our, ours, ourselves. Second. Singular. You, your, yours. Yourself. Plural, yourselves. Third. Masculine, he, him, his, himself. Feminine, she, her, hers, herself. Neuter, inanimate, it's itself epicene. They, them, they're, theirs. Themself. Plural, themselves. English also has other pronoun types, including demonstrative, relative, indefinite, and interrogative pronouns. English pronouns. English personal pronouns 252. Person number. Case. Subject object. First. Singular I me plural we us. Second. Singular. You. Plural. Third. Singular. He him she her. It they them. Plural epicene they them. Demonstrative relative indefinite interrogative. This who, whom, whose, one, one's, oneself, who, whom, whose, these, what, something, anything, nothing, things, what, that, which, someone, anyone, no one, people, which, those, that, somebody, anybody, nobody, people, former, latter. Personal and possessive. Personal. Personal pronouns may be classified by person, number, gender, and case. English has 3 persons first, second and third, and 2 numbers, singular and plural. In the third person singular there are also distinct pronoun forms for male, female, and neuter gender. 252 to 53 principal forms are shown in the adjacent table. English personal pronouns have 2 cases, subject and object. Subject pronouns are used in subject position, I like to eat chips, but she does not. Object pronouns are used for the object of a verb or preposition, John likes me but not her. 252 to 53. Other distinct forms found in some languages include second person informal and formal pronouns, the TV. Distinction like tu and vous in French. Formal second person pronouns can also signify plurality in many languages. There's no such distinction in standard modern English, though Elizabethan English marked the distinction without singular informal and you plural or singular formal. Some dialects of English have developed informal plural second person pronouns, for instance, y'all Southern American English and you guys American English. Inclusive and exclusive first person plural pronouns, which indicate whether or not the audience is included, that is, whether we means, you and I, or they and I. There is no such distinction in English. Intensive emphatic pronouns, which re-emphasize a noun or pronoun that has already been mentioned. English uses the same forms as the reflexive pronouns. For example, I did it myself contrasts reflexive use, I did it to myself. Direct and indirect object pronouns, such as le and lui in French. English uses the same form for both. For example, Mary loves him, direct object, Mary sent him a letter, indirect object. Prepositional pronouns, used after a preposition. English uses ordinary object pronouns here. Mary looked at him. Adjective pronouns, used in isolation or in certain other special grammatical contexts, like moi in French. No distinct forms exist in English. For example, who does this belong to? Me. Strong and weak forms of certain pronouns, found in some languages such as Polish. Pronoun avoidance, where personal pronouns are substituted by titles or kinship terms, particularly common in Southeast Asia. Possessive. Possessive pronouns are used to indicate possession in a broad sense. Some occur as independent noun phrases, mine, yours, hers, ours, theirs. An example is, those clothes are mine. Others act as a determiner and must accompany a noun, my, your, her, our, your, their, as in, I lost my wallet. His and its can fall into either category, although its is nearly always found in the second. Those of the second type have traditionally also been described as possessive adjectives, and in more modern terminology as possessive determiners. The term, possessive pronoun, is sometimes restricted to the first type. Both types replace possessive noun phrases. As an example, their crusade to capture our attention could replace the advertiser's crusade to capture our attention. 255 to 56. Reflexive and reciprocal. Reflexive pronouns are used when a person or thing acts on itself. For example, John cut himself. In English they all end in self or selves and must refer to a noun phrase elsewhere in the same clause. 255. Reciprocal pronouns refer to a reciprocal relationship, each other, one another. They must refer to a noun phrase in the same clause. 255. An example in English is, they do not like each other. In some languages, the same forms can be used as both reflexive and reciprocal pronouns. Demonstrative. Demonstrative pronouns in English, this, that and their plurals these, those often distinguish their targets by pointing or some other indication of position. For example, I'll take these. They may also be anaphoric, depending on an earlier expression for context. For example, a kid actor would try to be all sweet, and who needs that? 256. Indefinite. Indefinite pronouns, the largest group of pronouns, refer to one or more unspecified persons or things. One group in English includes compounds of some, any, every unknown with thing, one and body. For example, anyone can do that. Another group, including many, more, both, and most, can appear alone or followed by of. 254 to 55 in addition. Distributive pronouns are used to refer to members of a group separately rather than collectively. To each his own. Negative pronouns indicate the non-existence of people or things. Nobody thinks that. Impersonal pronouns normally refer to a person that are not specific as to first, second or third person in the way that the personal pronouns are. One does not clean one's own windows. Relative and interrogative. Relative. Relative pronouns in English include who, whom, whose, what, which and that. They rely on an antecedent, and refer back to people or things previously mentioned. People who smoke should quit now. They are used in relative clauses. 256. Relative pronouns can also be used as complementizers. Interrogative. Relative pronouns can be used in an interrogative setting as interrogative pronouns. Interrogative pronouns ask which person or thing is meant. In reference to a person, one may use who, subject, whom, object, or whose possessive. For example, who did that? In colloquial speech, whom is generally replaced by who. English non-personal interrogative pronouns which in what have only one form. 256 to 57. In English and many other languages, e.g. French and Czech, the sets of relative and interrogative pronouns are nearly identical. Compare English, who is that? Interrogative, and I know the woman who came, relative. In some other languages, interrogative pronouns and indefinite pronouns are frequently identical. For example, standard Chinese xian shini means what, as well as something or anything. Archaic personal pronouns 252. Person number. Case. Subject object. Second. Singular valley plural eu. Pulalakaya 3 du.kin. Pendi rda. Fight pres. Archaic forms. Though the personal pronouns described above are the current English pronouns, early modern English, as used by Shakespeare, for example, use a slightly different set of personal pronouns, shown in the table. The difference is entirely in the second person. Though one would rarely find these older forms used in recent literature, they are nevertheless considered part of modern English. Kinship. In English, kin terms like mother, uncle, cousin are a distinct word class from pronouns. However, many Australian Aboriginal languages have more elaborated systems of encoding kinship in language, including special kin forms of pronouns. In Marine Patha, for example, when selecting a non-singular exclusive pronoun to refer to a group, the speaker will assess whether or not the members of the group belong to a common class of gender or kinship. If all of the members of the referent group are male, the masculine form will be selected. If at least one is female, the feminine is selected, but if all the members are in a sibling-like kinship relation, a third sibling form is selected. 11. In Arabanawankangaroo, the speaker will use entirely different sets of pronouns depending on whether the speaker and the referent are or are not in a common moiety. See the following example. They two who are in the classificatory relationship of father and son are fighting. The people involved were a man and his wife's sister's son. 12. See Australian Aboriginal kinship for more details. Special uses. Some special uses of personal pronouns include generic you, where second-person pronouns are used in an indefinite sense. You can't buy good old-fashioned bulbs these days. Generic they. In China they drive on the right. Gender nonspecific uses, where a pronoun refers to a nonspecific person or a person whose gender is not specified. English usage and acceptance varies and has varied regarding generic he and singular they, among others. A closely related usage is the singular they to refer to a person whose gender is specified as non-binary, genderqueer, or other, which has gained popularity in LGBTQ+ culture in particular. Vernacular usage of bro is a gender-neutral, but often masculine pronoun. Preferred gender pronoun selected to reflect gender identity. Dummy pronouns, expletive pronouns used to satisfy a grammatical requirement for a noun or pronoun, but contributing nothing. Dummy pronouns, expletive pronouns used to satisfy a grammatical requirement for a noun or pronoun, but contributing nothing to its meaning. It is raining. Royal we, used to refer to a single person who was a monarch. We are not amused. Nocism, the use of the pronoun we to refer to oneself. Resumptive pronouns, intrusive, personal pronouns found, for example, in some relative clauses where a gap trace might be expected. This is the girl that I don't know what she said. See also. Related topics. Grammatical gender. In linguistics, the grammatical gender system is a specific form of a noun class system, where nouns are assigned to gender categories that are often not related to the real-world qualities of the entities denoted by those nouns. In languages with grammatical gender, most or all nouns inherently carry one value of the grammatical category called gender. 1. The values present in a given language, of which there are usually 2 or 3, are called the genders of that language. Whereas some authors use the term grammatical gender as a synonym of noun class, others use different definitions for each. Many authors prefer noun classes when none of the inflections in a language relate to sex or gender. According to one estimate, gender is used in approximately half of the world's languages. 2. According to one definition, genders are classes of nouns reflected in the behavior of associated words. 3, 4, 5. Overview. Languages with grammatical gender usually have 2 to 4 different genders, but some are attested with up to 20. 3, 6, 7. Common gender divisions include masculine and feminine, feminine, and neuter, or animate and inanimate. The grammatical gender of a noun affects the form of other words related to it. For example, in Spanish, determiners, adjectives, and pronouns change their form depending on the noun to which they refer. 8 Spanish nouns have 2 genders, masculine and feminine, represented here by the nouns gato and gata, respectively. Depending on the language and the word, this assignment might bear some relationship with the meaning of the noun, e.g., woman, is usually feminine or may be arbitrary. 9, 10. In a few languages, the assignment of any particular noun, i.e., nominal lexeme, that set of noun forms inflectable from a common lemma, to one grammatical gender is solely determined by that noun's meaning, or attributes, like biological sex, humanness, or animacy. 11, 12. However, the existence of words that denote male and female, such as the difference between aunt and uncle, is not enough to constitute a gender system. 2. In other languages, the division into genders usually correlates to some degree, at least for a certain set of nouns, such as those denoting humans, with some property or properties of the things that particular nouns denote. Such properties include animacy or non-animacy, humanness or non-humanness, and biological sex. However, in most languages, this semantic division is only partially valid, and many nouns may belong to a gender category that contrasts with their meaning, e.g. the word for manliness could be of feminine gender, as it is in French with la masculinité and la virilité. Note 1. In such a case, the gender assignment can also be influenced by the morphology or phonology of the noun, or in some cases can be apparently arbitrary. Usually each noun is assigned to one of the genders, and few or no nouns can occur in more than one gender. 3, 6, 7. Gender is considered an inherent quality of nouns, and it affects the forms of other related words, a process called agreement. Nouns may be considered the triggers of the process, whereas other words will be the target of these changes. 9. These related words can be, depending on the language, determiners, pronouns, numerals, quantifiers, possessives, adjectives, past and passive participles, articles, verbs, adverbs, complementizers, and adpositions. Gender class may be marked on the noun itself, but will also always be marked on other constituents in a noun phrase or sentence. If the noun is explicitly marked, both trigger and target may feature similar alternations. 6, 9, 10. Functions. 3 possible functions of grammatical gender include 13. 1. In a language with explicit inflections for gender, it is easy to express gender distinctions in animate beings. 2. Grammatical gender can be a valuable tool of disambiguation, rendering clarity about antecedents or homophones. 3. In literature, gender can be used to animate and personify inanimate nouns. Languages with gender distinction generally have fewer cases of ambiguity concerning, for example, pronominal reference. In the English phrase, a flowerbed in the garden which I maintain, only context tells us whether the relative clause, which I maintain, refers to the whole garden or just the flowerbed. In German, in cases where the objects in question have different grammatical gender, gender distinction prevents such ambiguity. The word for flowerbed, Blumenbeet, is neuter, whereas that for garden is masculine. Hence, if a neuter relative pronoun is used, the relative clause refers to flowerbed, and if a masculine pronoun is used, the relative clause refers to garden. Because of this, languages with gender distinction can often use pronouns where in English a noun would have to be repeated in order to avoid confusion. It does not, however, help in cases where the words are of the same grammatical gender. Moreover, grammatical gender may serve to distinguish homophones. It is a quite common phenomenon in language development for two phonemes to merge, thereby making etymologically distinct words sound alike. In languages with gender distinction, however, these word pairs may still be distinguishable by their gender. For example, French pot pot and pot skin are homophones po, but disagree in gender, le pot versus le pot. Gender contrasts. Common systems of gender contrast include 14 masculine feminine gender contrast masculine feminine neuter gender contrast animate inanimate gender contrast common neuter gender contrast. Masculine feminine contrast. Nouns that denote specifically male persons or animals are normally of masculine gender, those that denote specifically female persons or animals are normally of feminine gender, and nouns that denote something that does not have any sex, or do not specify the sex of their referent, have come to belong to one or other of the genders, in a way that may appear arbitrary. 9-10 examples of languages with such a system include most of the modern Romance languages, the Baltic languages, the Celtic languages, some Indo-Aryan languages e.g., Hindustani, and the Afroasiatic languages. Masculine-feminine neuter contrast. This is similar to systems with a masculine-feminine contrast, except that there is a third available gender, so nouns with sexless or unspecified sex reference may be either masculine, feminine, or neuter. There are also certain exceptional nouns whose gender does not follow the denoted sex, such as the German Mädchen, meaning girl, which is neuter. This is because it is actually a diminutive of mag, and all diminutive forms with the suffix gen are neuter. Examples of languages with such a system include later forms of Proto-Indo-European, see below, Sanskrit, some Germanic languages, most Slavic languages, a few Romance languages, Romanian, Asturian and Neapolitan, Marathi, Latin, and Greek. Animate-inanimate contrast. Here nouns that denote animate things, humans and animals, generally belong to one gender, and those that denote inanimate things to another, although there may be some deviation from that principle. Examples include earlier forms of Proto-Indo-European and the earliest family known to have split off from it, the extinct Anatolian languages, see below. Examples include earlier forms of Proto-Indo-European and the earliest family known to have split off from it, the extinct Anatolian languages, see below. Modern examples include Algonquian languages such as Ojibwe. 15. In Northern Kurdish language Kurmanji, the same word can have two genders according to the context. For example, if the word dar, meaning wood, or tree, is feminine, it means that it is a living tree, e.g., dar seve means apple tree, but if it is masculine, it means that it is dead, no longer living, e.g., dar seve means apple wood. So one wants to refer to a certain table that is made of wood from an apple tree, one cannot use the word dar with a feminine gender, and if one wants to refer to an apple tree in a garden, one cannot use dar with a masculine gender. Common neuter contrast. Here a masculine-feminine neuter system previously existed, but the distinction between masculine and feminine genders has been lost in nouns. They have merged into what is called common gender, though not in pronouns that can operate under natural gender. Thus nouns denoting people are usually of common gender, whereas other nouns may be of either gender. Examples include Danish and Swedish, see gender in Danish and Swedish, and to some extent Dutch, see gender in Dutch grammar. The dialect of the Old Norwegian capital Bergen also uses common gender and neuter exclusively. The common gender in Bergen and in Danish is inflected with the same articles and suffixes as the masculine gender in Norwegian Bokmål. This makes some obviously feminine noun phrases like, a cute girl, the well-milking cow, or, the pregnant mares, sound strange to most Norwegian ears when spoken by Danes and people from Bergen since they are inflected in a way that sounds like the masculine declensions in southeastern Norwegian dialects. The same does not apply to Swedish common gender, as the declensions follow a different pattern from both the Norwegian written languages. Norwegian Nynorsk, Norwegian Bokmål and most spoken dialects retain masculine, feminine and neuter even if their Scandinavian neighbors have lost one of the genders. As shown, the merger of masculine and feminine in these languages and dialects can be considered a reversal of the original split in Proto-Indo-European, see below. Other types of division or subdivision of gender. Some gender contrasts are referred to as classes. For some examples, see noun class. In some of the Slavic languages, for example, within the masculine and sometimes feminine and neuter genders, there is a further division between animate and inanimate nouns, and in Polish, also sometimes between nouns denoting humans and non-humans. Clause. In language, a clause is a constituent or phrase that comprises a semantic predicate, express or not, and a semantic predicate. 1. A typical clause consists of a subject and a syntactic predicate. 2. The latter typically a verb phrase composed of a verb with or without any objects and other modifiers. However, the subject is sometimes unexpressive. It is easily deducible from the context, especially in null subject language but also in other languages, including instances of the imperative mood in English. A complete simple sentence contains a single clause with a finite verb. Complex sentences contain at least one clause subordinated dependent to an independent clause, one that could stand alone as a simple sentence, which may be coordinated with other independents with or without dependents. Some dependent clauses are non-finite, i.e. they do not contain any element, verb marking a specific tense. 2 major distinctions. A primary division for the discussion of clauses is the distinction between independent clauses and dependent clauses. 3. An independent clause can stand alone, i.e. it can constitute a complete sentence by itself. A dependent clause, by contrast, relies on an independent clause's presence to be efficiently utilizable. A second significant distinction concerns the difference between finite and non-finite clauses. A finite clause contains a structurally central finite verb, whereas the structurally central word of a non-finite clause is often a non-finite verb. Traditional grammar focuses on finite clauses, the awareness of non-finite clauses having arisen much later in connection with the modern study of syntax. The discussion here also focuses on finite clauses, although some aspects of non-finite clauses are considered further below. Clauses can be classified according to a distinctive trait that is a prominent characteristic of their syntactic form. The position of the finite verb is one major trait used for classification, and the appearance of a specific type of focusing word, e.g. word is another. These two criteria overlap to an extent, which means that often no single aspect of syntactic form is always decisive in deciding how the clause functions. There are, however, strong tendencies. Standard SV clauses. Standard SV clauses, subject-verb, are the norm in English. They are usually declarative as opposed to exclamative, imperative, or interrogative. They express information neutrally, e.g. The pig has not yet been fed. Declarative clause, standard SV order I've been hungry for 2 hours. Declarative clause, standard SV order. That I've been hungry for 2 hours. Declarative clause, standard SV order, but functioning as a subordinate clause due to the appearance of a subordinator that. Declarative clauses like these are by far the most frequently occurring type of clause in any language. They can be viewed as basic, with other clause types being derived from them. Standard SV clauses can also be interrogative or exclamative, however, given the appropriate intonation contour and or the appearance of a question word, e.g. A. The pig has not yet been fed. Rising intonation on fed makes the clause a yes, no question. B. The pig has not yet been fed. Spoken forcefully, this clause is exclamative. C. You've been hungry for how long? Appearance of interrogative word how and rising intonation make the clause a constituent question. Examples like these demonstrate that how a clause functions cannot be known based entirely on a single distinctive syntactic criterion. SV clauses are usually declarative, but intonation and or the appearance of a question word can render them interrogative or exclamative. Verb-first clauses. Verb-first clauses in English usually play one of 3 roles. 1. They express a yes-no question via subject auxiliary inversion. 2. They express a condition as an embedded clause. Or 3. They express a command via imperative mood, e.g. A. He must stop laughing. Standard declarative SV clause, verb second order B. Should he stop laughing? Yes-no question expressed by verb first order circa. Had he stopped laughing? Condition expressed by verb first order D. Stop laughing. Imperative formed with verb first order. A. They have done the job. Standard declarative SV clause, verb second order B. Have they done the job? Yes-no question expressed by verb first order circa. Have they done the job? Condition expressed by verb first order D. Do the job. Imperative formed with verb first order. Most verb first clauses are independent clauses. Verb first conditional clauses, however, must be classified as embedded clauses because they cannot stand alone. WH clauses. In English, WH clauses contain a WH word. WH words often serve to help express a constituent question. They are also prevalent, though, as relative pronouns, in which case they serve to introduce a relative clause and are not part of a question. The WH word focuses a particular constituent, and most of the time, it appears in clause initial position. The following examples illustrate standard interrogative WH clauses. The B sentences are direct questions, independent clauses, and the C sentences contain the corresponding indirect questions, embedded clauses. A. Sam likes the meat. Standard declarative SV clause. B. Who likes the meat? Matrix interrogative WH clause focusing on the subject circa. They asked who likes the meat. Embedded interrogative WH clause focusing on the subject A. Larry sent Susan to the store. Standard declarative SV clause. B. Whom did Larry send to the store? Matrix interrogative WH clause focusing on the object, subject auxiliary inversion present. C. We know whom Larry sent to the store. Embedded WH clause focusing on the object, subject auxiliary inversion absent. A. Larry sent Susan to the store. Standard declarative SV clause. B. Where did Larry send Susan? Matrix interrogative WH clause focusing on the oblique object, subject auxiliary inversion present. C. Someone is wondering where Larry sent Susan. Embedded WH clause focusing on the oblique object, subject auxiliary inversion absent. One important aspect of matrix WH clauses is that subject auxiliary inversion is obligatory when something other than the subject is focused. When it is the subject or something embedded in the subject that is focused, however, subject auxiliary inversion does not occur. A. Who called you? Subject focused, no subject auxiliary inversion. B. Whom did you call? Object focused, subject auxiliary inversion occurs. Another important aspect of WH clauses concerns the absence of subject auxiliary inversion in embedded clauses, as illustrated in the C examples just produced. Subject auxiliary inversion is obligatory in matrix clauses when something other than the subject is focused, but it never occurs in embedded clauses regardless of the constituent that is focused. A systematic distinction in word order emerges across matrix WH clauses, which can have the S order, and embedded WH clauses, which always maintain SV order, e.g. A. Why are they doing that? Subject auxiliary inversion results in the S order in matrix WH clause. B. They told us why they are doing that. Subject auxiliary inversion is absent in embedded WH clause. C. They told us why are they doing that. Subject auxiliary inversion is blocked in embedded WH clause. A. Whom is he trying to avoid? Subject auxiliary inversion results in the S order in matrix WH clause. B. We know whom he is trying to avoid. Subject auxiliary inversion is absent in embedded WH clause. C. We know whom is he trying to avoid. Subject auxiliary inversion is blocked in embedded WH clause. Relative clauses. Relative clauses are a mixed group. In English they can be standard SV clauses if they are introduced by that or lack a relative pronoun entirely, or they can be WH clauses if they are introduced by a WH word that serves as a relative pronoun. Clauses according to semantic predicate argument function. Embedded clauses can be categorized according to their syntactic function in terms of predicate argument structures. They can function as arguments, as adjuncts, or as predicative expressions. That is, embedded clauses can be an argument of a predicate, an adjunct on a predicate, or part of the predicate itself. The predicate in question is usually the predicate of an independent clause, but embedding of predicates is also frequent. Argument clauses. A clause that functions as the argument of a given predicate is known as an argument clause. Argument clauses can appear as subjects, as objects, and as obliques. They can also modify a noun predicate, in which case they are known as content clauses. That they actually helped was really appreciated. SV clause functioning is the subject argument. They mentioned that they had actually helped. SV clause functioning is the object argument. What he said was ridiculous. WH clause functioning is the subject argument. We know what he said. WH clause functioning is an object argument. He talked about what he had said. WH clause functioning is an oblique object argument. The following examples illustrate argument clauses that provide the content of a noun. Such argument clauses are content clauses. A. The claim that he was going to change it. Argument clause that provides the content of a noun, i.e. content clause. B. The claim that he expressed. Adjunct clause, relative clause that modifies a noun. A. The idea that we should alter the law. Argument clause that provides the content of a noun, i.e. content clause. B. The idea that came up. Adjunct clause, relative clause that modifies a noun. The content clauses like these in the A sentences or arguments. Relative clauses introduced by the relative pronoun that is in the B clauses here have an outward appearance that is closely similar to that of content clauses. The relative clauses are adjuncts, however, not arguments. Adjunct clauses. Adjunct clauses are embedded clauses that modify an entire predicate argument structure. All clause types SV, verb first, WH can function as adjuncts, although the stereotypical adjunct clause is SV and introduced by subordinator i.e. subordinate conjunction, e.g. after, because, before, now, etc. e.g. A. Fred arrived before you did. Adjunct clause modifying matrix clause B. After Fred arrived, the party started. Adjunct clause modifying matrix clause circa. Susan skipped the meal because she is fasting. Adjunct clause modifying matrix clause. These adjunct clauses modify the entire matrix clause.